Where was it located? In a pass between the Caucasus Mountains. So when you hear the term white Caucasian male, there's something behind that to look into. White Caucasian male.
Judaism thus became divided into two basic groups which remain today: the Ashkenazim, which are the Khazars of the East, and the Sephardic Oriental, which are Jews of Spain, Turkey, and lands bordering on the Mediterranean. Today, the Ashkenazim, or Khazars, are the vast majority, about 80% of those who call themselves Jews.
Who are they? The Khazar tribes, K-H-A-Z-A-R. And they are the people who converted and became Jews. One, are white people, European people, who don't even have one drop of Semitic blood in their veins. These Khazar tribes are the people who became European Jews. And they're the ones who were able to block the Muslim army.
The Khazars were fascinated with that mystical aspect of Judaism called Kabbalah.
According to author Simon Schama, the Rothschilds own 80% of the land of Israel.
Jews, I call them Jews to you because they're known as Jews. I don't call them Jews. I refer to them as so-called Jews because I know what they are. If Jesus was a Jew, there isn't a Jew in the world today. And if those people are Jews, certainly our Lord and Savior was not one of them. And I can prove that. Now what happened? The Eastern European Jews, who form 92% of the world's population of those people who call themselves Jews, were originally Khazars. They were a warlike tribe that lived deep in the heart of Asia. And they were so warlike that even the Asiatics drove them out of Asia into Eastern Europe.
Zulkarnain travels in one direction. He's going in the direction of the setting of the sun, so west. And there he comes across a people. He reaches a lake of murky water.
L'épreuve s'étale sous nos yeux. Les Olmecs du Mexique donnèrent à leur dieu un visage africain.
Et ça, alors, c'est une autre sculpture des Olmecs. Les Indiens sont génétiquement imberbes. C'est donc bien un visage d'Européen, gravé quelques 2000 ans avant l'arrivée des Espagnols en Amérique. Bon, des visages africains et européens sculptés des siècles avant l'arrivée de Christophe Colomb. Mais d'où viennent-ils? Comment sont-ils arrivés ici? Comment sont-ils venus à influencer la civilisation la plus ancienne d'Amérique centrale, la culture mère du Mexique? Tout ce que les archéologues savent, c'est que les Olmecs se sont matérialisés d'un coup vers 1500 avant Jésus-Christ, avec toute leur sophistication. Il n'y a aucun signe d'une phase antérieure de développement de cette civilisation. Ce peuple, dont l'expression typique est la sculpture d'immenses têtes d'Européens et d'Africains, semble surgir de nulle part.
Zulkarnain then traveled in the opposite direction, the rising of the sun, and so eastwards. And there he came across a people for whom we had provided no cover. Cover from what? That's a big question. The translation that was just given, cover from the sunshine. People who are not covered from the sunshine will eventually have their skin pigmented, dark skin people. Or cover from the elements, so people living a primitive way of life. We don't know which one. How are you going to deal with a primitive people when power rests on the foundations of faith? كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا. The language in the Quran is so pithy. Thus did Zulkarnain leave them as they were. He had the compassion. He had the good sense and the wisdom. He had the sympathy not to disturb them in their way of life. And then he traveled in a third direction, but the rabbis had not asked for that. But it was understood that that is what they wanted, the third journey. And so Allah sent the answer. You wanted to know about GOG and MAGOG? I'll tell you about GOG and MAGOG. When he traveled in the third direction, if we had the time, we could argue that it was north. But this book will give you the evidence. It was north. And there between two mountains, it passed between two mountain ranges, and it is later confirmed that this is the Caucasus Mountains. The Caucasus Mountains, you remember? White, Caucasian means? How did they get the word Caucasian? Between the Caucasus Mountains, this passageway, there he came across a people لا يكادون يفقهون قولا, whose language could not be understood. But this is a world traveler. He has an army with him. Surely he would understand the language of a people, except when that people had never interacted with the rest of the world. When that people had never had trade and commerce with the rest of the world. When that people had never walked on the stage of history, like China, like Babylon, like Mexico, like Africa. Not these people. Who are these people?
reduce this so you don't get too confused about the history of Eastern Europe. They set up this big Khazar kingdom, 800,000 square miles. Only there was no Russia, there were no other countries, and the Khazar kingdom was the biggest country in all Europe. So big and so powerful that when the other monarchs wanted to go to war, the Khazars would loan them 40,000 soldiers. That's how big and powerful they were. Now, they were phallic worshippers, which is filthy. I don't want to go into the details of that now. It was their religion, the way it was the religion of many other pagans or barbarians elsewhere in the world. Now, the king became so disgusted with the degeneracy of his kingdom that he decided to adopt a so-called monotheistic faith, either Christianity, Islam, the Muslim faith, or what is known today as Judaism, really Talmudism. So, like spinning a top, he said, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and he picked out so-called Judaism. And that became the state religion, and he sent down to the Talmudic schools of Talavisa and Surah, and brought up thousands of these rabbis with their teachings, and he opened up synagogues and schools in his kingdom of 800,000 people, 800,000 square miles, and maybe 10 to 20 million people, and they became what we call Jews. There wasn't one of them that ever had an ancestor that ever put a toe in the Holy Land, not alone in Old Testament history, but back to time, the beginning of time. Not one of them. And yet they come to the Christians and they ask us to support their armed insurrection in Palestine by saying, well, you want to certainly help repatriate God's chosen people to their promised land, their ancestral homeland, Italy. We gave you one of our boys as your Lord and Savior. You now go to church on Sunday and kneel, and you worship a Jew, and we are Jews. Well, they were pagan Khazars who were converted just the same as the Irish. And it's just as ridiculous to call them people of the Holy Land as it would be. There are 54 million Chinese Muslims. 54 million. And Muhammad only died in 620 AD, so in that time, 54 million Chinese have accepted Islam as their religious belief. Now imagine in China, 2,000 miles away from Arabia, where the city of Mecca is located, where Muhammad was born, imagine if the 54 million Chinese call themselves Arabs. Imagine. Why, you say they're lunatics. Any man that believes that those 54 million Chinese are Arabs must be crazy. All they did was adopt as a religious faith a belief that had its origin in Mecca, in Arabia. The same as the Irish. When the Irish became Christians, nobody jumped then in the ocean and imported from the Holy Land a new crop of inhabitants that were Christians, that Christian flesh and blood. They weren't different people. They were the same people, but they had accepted Christianity as their religious faith.